It's the only thing that makes sense, otherwise, N says he would have dropped her solo by now. But now the real question is, what even is this place? With junk piled everywhere. It looks like an armory. But Nagi's not buying it. Their weapons don't match what the undead are using. His guess? This is a trophy room. Liches, being smart bosses. Love, collecting weapons from adventurers they've offed. Like 6 souvenirs. And honestly, that's not even surprising. This dungeon is way too hard for its level. So, naturally, other groups have totally wiped here before. What doesn't add up are the random kids' toys, shovels, and teddy bears. Then Stone chimes in, remembering he heard something about this. Like he mentioned earlier, they only tackle dungeons everyone else avoids. When this one popped up, it got a weird reputation. Almost every team that entered failed. And around then, people from nearby villages started vanishing. He never imagined something like this could happen, but maybe this is what it was all about. Nagi figures it's a dungeon abduction. Wait. What? Monsters sneaking out to snatch villagers? Nines finds that bizarre. Monsters are supposed to be locked in their dungeons. Nagi clarifies, it's just a theory. That stuff is extremely rare. Any monster outside its dungeon gets way weaker. That's why they only bail when something abnormal is happening. Like a dungeon break. For example, Nines says, it's simple. They just need to waste that jerk. And it'll all make sense. He has no choice. He can't just ignore an injustice like this. The other two just stare. Like, okay, but how? Without your sword? To which he says he has a solution. He whips out a headband, ties it on as a blindfold, and says he'll trick his own oath. Maggie asks if he's sure about this. Normally, breaking an oath has some pretty serious consequences. And how's this even supposed to work? Nines explains the oath is personal. If he can convince himself it doesn't count, it might just work. A classic level-up Manhwa loophole. He just needs to land one single clean hit on the Lich. That should be enough to snap Agnisa out of it. Obviously, Stone asks the question on everyone's mind. How the hell do you land a hit while blindfolded? Maggie ignores that and just asks if he's really sure. If they could guide him to the boss, could he actually land the blow? But N says, that's the wrong question. It's not about if they can or not, it's what they have to do. Nagi says, all right then, I'll be his eyes and guide him straight to the boss. Stone's still freaking out, asking how they'll pull this off with an undead army on their tail. And to hit the Lich, they have to get past Agnisa first. Problem is, in front of her is another whole army. The only way through is if they had an army of their own. Nagi says he's right. They need an army. One of their own. The monsters even make a path to the boss. Like an invitation. Then suddenly, a little guy runs in screaming, shouting all sorts of nonsense. The Lich catches on fast. Those little rats were trying to play games. He strides forward, ordering them captured, rip off an arm or two if needed. The creatures burst out, panicking. Maggie warns the others. They're coming, stay behind me. One monster steps on a rope with a mushroom. Poof, another smoke bomb goes off. Gluttony leaps from the backpack, and Nagi tells him to get ready. If they follow his lead, he'll handle the aiming. They just need to pull the trigger. And of course, inside the bag is a whole mob of little stones, all armed with crossbows from the trophy room. Gluttony gives the command and the squad fires a full volley toward the exit. From the bag's mouth, a hailstorm of arrows blasts out at the incoming monsters. Stone's just staring. Like, what kind of attack even is this? Meanwhile, Nagi grips the backpack tight, saying their job was to charge through and go straight for the boss. Then the scene cuts to the Adventurers Guild, where Petra sits with a friend who asks what she's been writing so much. She's been acting strange ever since returning from that dungeon. Are you researching something? She asks. Petra says no. She just has a lot on her mind and is trying to organize her thoughts. Then she asks, is it really necessary to have a combat talent to be an adventurer? Her friend looks at her like she's nuts. What kind of question is that? Of course, you need one. If you don't have a combat talent, how are you supposed to survive in a dungeon? Why else do people go through hell to get one? She doesn't even explain, just points to the side. Some guy's yelling his lungs out, begging not to be screwed over. His awakened talent is sewing. He shouts that he's not accepting that. That can't be his talent. He's going to re-register. But Petra just says he can't become an adventurer. Her friend tells her to face reality. They see people like this every day. The odds of awakening a talent that works for adventuring are super low. Petra starts thinking, in this world, your life is basically set from the beginning. The guild supports everyone during the talent awakening ceremony. It's a process where your body's ether is analyzed, and your ability's name appears in a book. Most say it's better to know early if you have talent, so you know which path to take in life. Petra used to think that way too, but after meeting Nagi and going through everything they faced together, she started to question it. Is a person's future really determined by their birth talent? Back in the dungeon, Nagi's arrow rain is still going, and the monsters are all dropping. Simultaneously, Nagi moves to the front, leading the charge with nines right behind him. They might have managed to delay the creatures, but obviously, they're getting back up soon. So, they must move before this chance is lost. Nines asks if this plan is even legitimate, and even with them shouting orders and talking big, he still has no idea what's going on. Stone just tells him to show some respect. Nagi's incredible, like a hero from a level-up manhwa. Now, it all makes sense. That story about him leading an expedition into a dungeon about to break, Nagi just tells them to stay focused. They were finally at the boss room where things really begin. And man, I thought that horde was cleared. But nope, they're all still there, lined up like they were waiting for the grand finale. Peeking around the corner, Nines mutters that he expected a lot, but not this many. And they have to remember the Lich still has his blink ability. That's how he dodged Agnes's attack earlier. Nines tells him not to worry, that he'll take that freak out in a single strike. But then the Lich screams, and now they have no choice but to push forward with the plan, obviously, to reach their target. They have to get past that wall of undead. But that doesn't mean they need to fight every single one of them. In fact, they didn't need to fight any. Nagi fires an arrow straight at the chandelier. Boom! An explosion, and the entire room goes dark. Undead naturally rely far more on scent than sight to navigate. There's even that old tale where a guy would smear monster scent on himself to blend in. I wonder which story that is. Anyway, Nagi doesn't have any corpses to use right now, but his backpack has been soaking up the scent of this place, and now it starts releasing it. As the odor spreads, they move through the troops. Nines asks what's going on, and Nagi calmly says they're sneaking their way to the Lich. Bit by bit, the group quietly advances while the Lich grumbles about a cheap trick. You filthy rats actually think something like this would work? He stretches a finger, conjuring a burst of fire that lights up the whole room, but then he looks around. Where are the rats? Stone slams the floor, raising a ramp over the undead army. From there, they approach the Lich's flank, and Nines is already hyped, saying he can feel it. It's time for the strike. The obvious problem? Agnes is right there on the left. So, our boy chucks a pile of food at her, hoping for a few precious seconds to pull this off. Nines says got it, and leaps into attack. The Lich glares right at him, vowing none of them will leave this place alive. He raises his arm to cast, "You'll be torn apart." But bam! Out of nowhere, he gets booted clear across the room. Both Nines and Nagi just freeze. Why did Agnes ignore the bait? Then it dawns on them. She already ate too much. Dang it. So that's the secret to her thunder thighs. Sting's totally lost, clueless what to do. Nagi insists it's not too late. Nines can still try again. But just as Nines unleashes a battle cry, a literal goddess appears. She declares he's violated his secret oath and abandoned his honor. As his punishment, he shall be judged. Nagi realizes Nines is out, like a side character in a level-up manhwa, and the undead army is closing in. Sting tells him not to panic. He'll hold them off for now. He punches the ground, erecting another giant stone wall. Of course, that thing will last maybe 5 minutes, tops, and now they desperately need a plan fast. Once that wall falls, Sting's out of ether. They'll be drained. Back at the association, Petra's friend is still rambling. Like she said, adventurers without talents do exist. They're driven by an insane desire, training hard enough to reach an equivalent level of strength. But ultimately, the deciding factor is still aether. Only those with combat talents can actually build it up in their bodies. Low-level monsters and beginner dungeons, someone who trained seriously can handle those. But once you start progressing further, once you face real bosses, you can't win without ether. Back in the dungeon, Nagi tries his Aerostorm trick again. But this time, nothing connects. His shots just fall flat to the ground. And that, right there, is why not everyone can become an adventurer. Explosions and fire are now raging everywhere, and Nines still hasn't done a single thing. He says he'll hold the attacks back, and tells the others to run while they still have a chance. Our main character doesn't want to ditch him, but his buddy insists it's his job to see everyone out alive. The Lich just cackles, calling it pathetic. Did they seriously think anyone was walking out of here alive? The guy's forming a literal black hole in his hand. And yeah, surviving that won't be easy. The attack blasts toward Nines. A huge explosion erupts, and the Lich floats midair in the room's center, mocking them, saying they weren't even worth his time. To him, they were nothing, unworthy to face him, but maybe watching former allies fight each other might be amusing. Agnesa lunges at Nagi, her flames flaring around her. Meanwhile, back at the association, Petra is still buried in books and research, still deep in thought about becoming an adventurer without a talent. Her friend appears again and asks for the second time why she's so obsessed with this all of a sudden. She already explained, you can't become a proper adventurer without a talent. Petra says she gets that, but she recently met someone who made her question if that's really true. Then she asks Rasha. And finally, we get her name. How many times a porter usually enters dungeons per year or week? Rasha thinks, saying at most once or twice. Only the truly crazy ones go 3 times a week. So maybe they do 50 to 100 a year. Petra agrees. Yep, that's average. But she knows someone, a specific porter, who clears about 300 dungeons a year, like a real-life level-up Manhwa protagonist. Rasha is in disbelief. She asks if someone like that even exists. To her, that person would have to be totally obsessed with dungeons. Either that, or they're obsessed with money. Or maybe they have some deep, endless hatred for monsters. Back with Nagi. He barely blocks an attack from Agnesa, aimed right at his head. Her sword isn't called a legendary for nothing. It sliced right through his weapon like it was butter. He realizes that when facing real power, he's helpless. The gap between him and Agnesa is just massive. He blocks another strike. Another weapon is slashed to pieces. He pulls out a shield, then another sword. There's like a dozen now scattered across the floor. But he's not giving up. He still has one advantage. While adventurers are clearing dungeons, a porter doesn't really have much to do. All he can do is watch them fight. That's why he now knows Agnes's fencing style like the back of his hand. Her habits, her rhythm. Every one of her attacks starts with an ignition burst, then she follows up with a sword technique. The problem is, it all happens in a split second. His reaction time is way too slow. The window between ignition and strike is less than 0.2 seconds. Even seeing it coming, dodging just isn't possible. Still, he's somehow managing to block. He is predicting and anticipating every single move based on how she decides her actions in battle. He needs to be at least half a step ahead of her. And in this moment, all he can do is thank Durkin. After their fight, Durkin taught him what it means to face Mythal level speed. This is just survival, and you don't win a level up Manhwa by only defending. He keeps pushing toward the Lich, telling himself he needs to find a way out of this. He has to strike the Lich or Agnes to break whatever is controlling her now. Obviously, hitting her is the easier option. He swings an axe from the side, knowing that the moment he tries to land the blow, she's going to slash right through it. And that's exactly what happens. Sword, axe, it doesn't matter. That blade of hers cuts through anything. So, what about a spear? Something he can throw. Too late. Already sliced in two. Against this kind of magic, which looks more like a dragon's breath than any sword technique, even at range, his attacks are completely useless. The only option left was to try everything. So, he tells Gluttony to start chucking every weapon from the backpack. And oh my god, it was a downpour. Nagi grabs the first one, slash, cut in half. Grabs a second, shing. Another blade shattered. He stumbles back, picks one up off the ground. Crack. Gone. This dude is spinning, flipping, swinging pickaxes, rolling side to side, pulling every move in the book. But obviously, nothing's working. Every weapon melts against that infernal flame blade like it's made of paper. Still, he knows he can't stop thinking. He has to keep going. How is this white rank even tanking all this? No one knows. But he keeps saying just a little more while another billion swords get snapped like twigs. Agnes has style, pulling out another flame blade, launching an explosive rose, and Nagi barely jumps out of the center just in time. In that moment, he knew this was his limit. Before Agnes ran out of gas, or before her blade broke, his body was going to give out. And sure enough, bam, she lands a clean kick, sending him flying. He screams, crashing across the ground while the Lich floats above, laughing. This is delightful. The monster says, most of the hunters who made it this far were garbage. But you're worth something. I want your strength. If you become part of this place, our kingdom will expand. Our empire will rise again in this world. Nagi is just standing there, barely holding it together, completely drained. And then he says, "A creature planning to attack the world outside is too dangerous to let live. Every monster in every dungeon has to die." He turns to Gluttony and asks, "How many weapons are left?" Gluttony says, "Just one." Nagi says, "That's fine." He goes to draw it, but then pauses. Eyes shut. He gently puts it away. It's no use. And right then, in the middle of that desperate moment, Nagi loses consciousness for just a second. And in that state, somewhere between dream and death, he remembers why he got so obsessed with dungeons. The day a dungeon broke, and he lost everything. It was then he made the vow he would destroy every last one of them. But that's not something a simple porter could ever do. Some old dude once told him to give up on being an adventurer. It was impossible. But then he asked, why did this kid have those eyes? Eyes that didn't belong to someone about to quit. The man raised his finger and said, "No one has ever become an adventurer without a talent. But adventurers exist to kill monsters. And if someone could train hard enough to defeat real adventurers, then wouldn't that person be an adventurer, too? Even if he had to train a lifetime, it would be difficult. But there might be one way. Maybe he could master a single sword technique. If he couldn't learn many, then just one. One level-up Manhwa move that stood on equal ground with any adventurer. And if he focused for years, maybe, just maybe, that one strike could let him go head-to-head. So Nagi began training that one single cut. All his strength, all his will. He practiced relentlessly. But nothing changed. Of course it didn't. He was up against a wall no one could climb. But even so, he never stopped. And perhaps that's why, even unconscious, his body instinctively took the stance he'd trained for years. Everything started with him drawing his sword from the bag. He never owned a sheath. So naturally, he always drew it from his backpack. The Lich just grins. "I'm excited to see how this ends. Once you die, you'll receive the gift of immortality and abandon that mortal body." Agnesa charges forward. And in this world, we all know without talent, you don't become an adventurer. Without the power to control ether, you can't cut a monster. But who decided that? Nagi begins to draw his sword and a single slash tears through the entire room. Something slices right past Agnesa, aimed straight for the Lich. The monster watches, failing to react in time. From his point of view, everything suddenly tilts sideways because Nagi had sliced straight through him, and now the Lich's head was rolling on the ground. The boy has no idea what he just did, but that slash tore apart the line between ether users and non-users. A real level-up Manhwa moment, and in the years to come, his swordsmanship would be remembered. The name Azrahan's quick draw slash. Wait. Azran? Isn't that move from Java? From our dear Lloyd Frontiers crew? We're not going to find out because the next chapter opens with a shift. The dungeons kept multiplying. The pace was so fast that humanity, fragile as it was, no longer had the strength to stop it. At this rate of non-stop appearances, the kingdoms of this world faced total collapse. Only when humans began awakening ether and took on the title of adventurers did they start pushing back against the monsters. They say this clear distinction between those with ether and those without exists for one reason: to protect people. Because in the past, many refused to accept reality. Even without talent, without anything, they'd still enter dungeons, and what happened was obvious. They were all slaughtered by monsters. Rasha tells Petra she must understand. It might sound cruel, but in truth, it's the only way to protect people not born with talent. Petra knows she's right. As much as she's been following that line of thought, she clearly remembers that specific day. The dungeon break. The way Nagi gazed at the thick-thighed warrior queen with awe. You could see it in his eyes. The desire to become an adventurer burned in him. That's why she's starting to believe that just sitting around waiting for someone with great talent isn't what truly makes an adventurer, and so she decides to leave those words behind. Meaning, she wrote all this down, but isn't doing anything about it. Damn it. Petra. Back in the dungeon after Nagi's slash that ended everything, Agnesa finally wakes up. Even her sword had been destroyed. Split right down the middle. She wants to know how Nagi pulled that off, but he tells her it's not over yet. That creature was starting to rise again. The Lich screams, demanding to know how the brat dared lay a hand on his body. Liches, of course, are undead and notoriously hard to kill. Unlike human mages, they aren't easy to put down. They have a phylactery, a vessel of life. Unless it's destroyed, they'll just keep coming back again and again. Nagi thinks he needs to land one more hit, but obviously his body is done. He drops to his knees. Agnesa, radiant as ever, tells him to rest now. She'll fix the mistake she made. She charges the lich, who screams for her to come at him, and wow. This girl goes full-on acrobat, flipping through the air like she's in some fantasy Olympics. She knew there were two ways to defeat a lich. First, destroy the life vessel directly. Second, keep attacking over and over until its phylactery runs out of fuel. Thankfully, in Agnisa's case, her attacks are fire-based, which means the monster keeps burning. But the lich insists none of it matters. He's immortal. She doesn't seem convinced. She says he cloaked her entire body in mana earlier, but that just exposed his own weakness. Because the moment she touched that mana, she also saw the source of his life energy. And right away, the lich realizes she's heading for the throne. Her attack hits dead center, and the lich lets out a guttural scream. He begins to dissolve right there, muttering about all his dreams vanishing. Just beautiful. She stands by the throne and quickly turns, asking if Nagi's all right. She just took down the boss, but she's dying to know what the heck that technique of his was. The poor guy just flops back, saying he has no clue. He's just happy it all worked out. Thankfully, she was there for them, too. But she insists she deserves no credit. She actually messed everything up and isn't fit to be a leader. Even while under the lich's control, she still remembers everything that went down. She knows she has the physical strength, the ether, and fully unlocked talents. The power gap should have been massive. Yet, he used a technique that not only shattered her sword but also took down the lich behind her. Like in a level-up manhwa, what she had to acknowledge wasn't just his attack power, but that he never gave up, no matter what. In that exact moment, a memory comes to the surface. Someone once told her to remember this. Their guild didn't need adventurers with overwhelming strength. What they truly needed were adventurers with an iron will. She'd meet a real level-up manhwa hero one day, and then she'd understand why. Someone who, even when facing a full-blown crisis, refuses to back down. That person can't be measured by rank. That's a true adventurer. And now, as vice captain of Wind of Twilight, it was her job to ensure this boy joined their ranks. She calls out to Nagi, saying she will ask him one more time. Their guild isn't one chasing gold or fame. They exist for one reason, to eliminate dungeons and prevent breaks from occurring. And that's precisely why they always take dungeons no one else will touch. It's also why they don't recruit the strongest fighters. They want people with resolve, people like him. People who risk everything just to save others, even expecting nothing in return. And now this tall goddess, impressive thighs and all, she looks right at him and asks, "Do you want to join us?" He's frozen, thinking. A guild focused solely on preventing dungeon breaks. That was his dream, but he had never found one like it until now. He recalls the old man who said he was too late, that the village he cared for was already destroyed, and Nagi wonders if this is what he truly wants. He extends his hand, fingers pressed tight, and says, if that's what she wants, then he'll give it a try. Together, they'll end dungeon breaks. She welcomes him to the team, and just then, Stone wakes up, looking confused, groggy. He has no clue what happened. He looks up to see Agnisa standing there. They fill him in, and from what he gathers, someone slashed something. Agnisa woke up and then killed the boss. That's it, he figures, but Agnisa is already marching to nines, ready to ask if the useless idiot did nothing while she was out. She tells him to get up. He's all twisted and half asleep, but he leaps up in a panic, completely out of nowhere. He charges her, grabs her shoulders, and headbutts her, shouting this will wake her up. Then he turns to Nagi and proudly says, "See that? You realize how amazing I am, right?" Obviously. Agnisa is ready to absolutely demolish Nines, declaring, today is the day he dies. And so, the brawl begins. But that's it. Cemetery dungeon complete. Now that you think about it, this whole dungeon run was just to escape the guys trying to off Nines outside. Nines says, yeah, that whole thing was pretty much a nightmare. But Agnisa looks aside and says, our job's not over yet. There were still items recovered from the cemetery. Usually, the association sends people to return them to the families. But since this dungeon was so isolated, way out in the middle of nowhere, that probably wasn't going to happen. So, they decided to handle it themselves. In a nearby house, a woman is preparing soup, pours it into a bowl, and sits with her husband. But then, you notice a third bowl, a small one, for a child. Oh man, the child died. Taken in the dungeon, Nagi knocks on their door. When they open it, they see the little bear in his arms. And that's it. This truth had to hit home for Nines. This part was often harder than the dungeon itself, but it was something that had to be done. Later on, All the items were returned to the villagers. On the way back, Agnesa figures he thinks they went too far. But that's what their guild is all about. Maggie just tells her it's no big deal. That family. They used to set an extra plate at every meal, just hoping their loved one would come home. And now he's thinking how awful it is that their news just snuffed out that family's last bit of hope. Agnesa, though, says in a way, it's for the best. At least the family isn't stuck waiting forever, never knowing if that person would ever return. Maggie looks a little taken aback by her logic. Then Nines jumps in, asking why a lich would even be kidnapping humans. She just replies that it's hard to say. All she knows is that cemetery dungeons get nastier the longer they're ignored. But what really bugged her was seeing the lich's final moments. It was crying, and she clearly heard it whisper an apology to the creator. That's a name most adventurers don't even dare to say. This world of dungeons is already full of bizarre, unexplained stuff. And now, she's got a bad feeling, something big is coming. A real storm's brewing, so she lays it out straight. She doesn't know why it's happening. But as adventurers, all they can do is clear dungeons before it starts again. After that mission, they trekked back to the city, which took a week. When they arrived, something felt weird. Maggie's looking around, totally confused, until a hand shoots out, begging for a coin. It's Nero and Destar. Turns out, life has not been kind to these two fellas. Honestly, I'd almost forgotten about these poor saps. But hey, they're good dudes. They've apparently been bugging the chubby one for hours now. That's when she scoffs that, from what she heard, the kid's not even a real hero. So yeah, they all got played. She tells them to go bother someone else. Even so, the two of them just keep insisting they want in, vowing to follow him forever. She realizes they aren't going to listen to a word she says. Then, a mischievous idea pops into her head. She tells them there's an entrance test. If they were eating, they wouldn't need to take it. Of course, the two immediately say they're in. So, she's like, all right. Then, and tells them the test is to gather 5,000 gold coins. They gave it their all, grinding out every quest they could. But even after pooling everything, they didn't even have 500. How could they ever join the guild at this rate? That's when, out of nowhere, this blonde-haired dude asks if it's money they're after. If they dream of getting rich quick, all they had to do was place a bet with him. Opportunities like this don't come around every day. Good grief. This gherkin starts roasting them, calling them a pair of odd-looking dummies. And maybe he had a point. That's when they learned that in life, the fastest way to make money is also the fastest way to lose it all. Of course, they lost every single coin toss and ended up totally broke, completely bankrupt. Maggie asks if they really got into gambling and have been starving for days. They claim it's not exactly like that, but all he can think is these two are a couple of genuine boneheads. Still, he also knows that whole guild entrance test was just a scam to get their money. That's when they ask what happened with Agnesa's guild invite and him turning her down. He says he did refuse, but he accepted in the end. Desar begs him, pleading for him to please help them get in, too. But then he suddenly stops, saying he gets it now. They have to pass the test, it's the only way to prove themselves. The only problem is 5,000 gold is an insane amount of cash. So, once again, they beg for help. And Maggie wants to. The issue is, in that last dungeon, he literally broke every single one of his swords. So yeah, he's short on cash too. But then he remembers a certain dungeon, a classic level-up Manhwa spot perfect for making bank, and figures he should check if it's open. Back at the adventurer's office, Petra's working when our guy shows up and calls her name. Right away, Nero declares they're there to make money. They really, really need it. Then our guy says he's taking those two lunatics into a dungeon and wants to see which ones are available. Petra's about to say even he can't just pick any dungeon he wants, when suddenly her face lights up. She says he must be thinking of Times That Times dungeon. The scene flips to a minecart flying down the tracks, the two of them speeding through the cave. Desar wonders why the last dungeon went upward, but this one just goes deeper and deeper. Nagi tells him not to worry. They're nearly there. And of course, they're using their old backpack technique. Shortly after, they reach the lower levels. Everyone is confused because there aren't any monsters. Nagi explains, this is because the dungeon was cleared out a long time ago. This is a mining dungeon, a place rich in minerals and perfect for earning cash. These kinds of dungeons don't just disappear after they are finished. And because of that, people can still take missions to come here with a pickaxe and grab whatever ores they find. Naturally, the upper areas get picked clean real fast. But it is a different story when you get to the deepest levels. Then he tells them to look. Man, there were ores everywhere. Normally, nobody goes down that far since it takes forever, but since they used the backpack trick, they got there in no time. Also, it's tough hauling that ore up, unless, once again, you have that backpack. That bag is a real level-up Manhwa cheat. Then Nagi says it's time for them to start mining. The good ol' honest Minecraft grind begins. And those two dopes wonder why no dungeon they visit is ever normal. Nearby, Nagi is wiping off sweat, thinking it has been a while since he spent time in this place. Back in the day, he used to be the master of this whole place, but now he is getting exhausted after just a few hours. Or maybe it was that sword technique from earlier that drained him, as his body hasn't recovered yet. It felt like, for just a second, he poured every fiber of his being into that single attack. A power that could rival even high-level adventurers. He's daydreaming that his moment has come when suddenly Gluttony appears. Nagi already knows the little menace must have caught the scent of ore and is ready to devour it all. But right at that moment, the other little guys pop out too. Oh boy. And they're emerging with pickaxes in hand. Everyone's hungry, so they slap on some helmets and dive in. I'm telling you, this guy's backpack is busted. It's like he brought a whole mining crew. Nagi's amazed. They've even lined up, tossing everything into the backpack. Of course, 10% of what they gather gets eaten, but who cares? It is worth it. Then, he calls out for Nero and Dashar. But right then, he makes a critical mistake. There's one phrase you should never utter in a dungeon. One of the little guys says, "There's no monsters around." It's so peaceful. And sure enough, the next second, they get smacked by monsters. Dashar is standing there, smiling, saying that at this pace, they'll spend a few weeks and clear the whole place. Might as well bust the dungeon wide open. Regular adventurers wouldn't stand a chance. But he's no ordinary dude. The guy slams his thumb down and sets off an explosion. I figured he would summon his golems to farm. But nope. He says it is a brilliant idea. And Nero congratulates him, saying, it really will speed things up. But then the wall right behind them starts to crack. Huh? What's going on? His face turns red. And from that wall, a stone golem appears. Honestly, I was hoping for a fire golem. Why not spice things up? It looks scary. But now that it's on the ground, it's kind of cute. Or maybe not. Because now it's chasing them. And Nagi's yelling for everyone to get out. Turns out, Dashar's boom triggered a secret area. Secret rooms are just what they sound like. And they usually hold much rarer treasures than the rest of the dungeon. The problem is, that guardian golem is a rank C monster. And this party, just 3 unlucky silver ranks. This ain't some level-up Manhwa fantasy. To make things worse, the escape route they were heading for is now blocked. The guy's explosion messed up the place. And the idiot is standing there thinking it was a compliment. Unbelievable. That's when Gluttony pops from the backpack and says he and the boys will handle it, starting to hack a path with a pickaxe. Nagi gives his thanks. But they've got a bigger problem now, that monster. Dashidar puffs his chest out, telling everyone to back off. He woke it, so he'll deal with it. But our protagonist warns him it's way too dangerous. They're deep underground, and one big boom could turn this dungeon into their tomb. Realizing his golems are useless here, Dashidar's ego deflates. He's just another dude now, so he quietly finds a corner to sulk in. Nero, however, declares her time to shine has arrived. She's been waiting for this. And just like that, overflowing with confidence, she charges in, shouting she'll handle it. Nagi warns her to be careful since fighters and golems are a bad match. Naturally, the mad lass flies in with a kick, which does absolutely nothing but hurt her own foot. The boss immediately goes back to chasing Dashidar. As Nagi asks what Nero's ability even is, she claims to have athleticism and flexibility. Which, yeah, aren't exactly special abilities, are they? The poor girl begs him not to bully her for having no real talent. Nagi's realizing these two are pretty much useless. In any great level-up Manhwa, an adventurer needs a special skill. Still, being the nice guy he is, Nagi tells her it's fine. Her physical stats were already impressively high, nearing real power. But he knows this fight is all on him now. He has to use his last resort, a relic from the cemetery dungeon. Hold on. Come to think of it, we never saw what treasure he got. Stone wanted to sell it immediately, claiming it was worth a fortune. Nines wanted it too, saying he liked the design. But of course, Agnesa shot them both down. Anyone who didn't help got nothing. She took it for herself. Sneaky as always. Oh, but then she polished it up and said it was Nagi's. All shiny and beautiful. She told him it was his. And it's about time. After he's gone through dozens of swords, this blade is number 444, a rare rank sword named the Blade of the Dead. This is next level gear, far beyond shop-bought junk. The only problem is activating its technique, requires extreme focus and time. So he tells the two stooges to buy him some time and steps up, saying he'll handle this. Nero rushes in, and man, I swear the artist has a thing for character designs. This girl's about to leap off the page. The giant golem swings down from above, but she uses that flexibility to land right on its hand, total Levi Ackerman style. She's sprinting up its arm like it's a cakewalk, but has to leap back down and dodge again. Meanwhile, Nagi is deep in his ritual, slowly drawing the blade as she keeps weaving. The golem's going berserk, and she mutters that if she can't do this, she can't call herself an adventurer. Dashidar, though, sees she's losing control, saying she always cracked during training. He screams at Nagi to hurry up. Our boy is drawing the sword, but I have a bad feeling this will fail. Nero's ducking and weaving, remembering how she's never had a special ability. On top of that, she was always shamed for being a beastman. But even so, she's determined to be a great adventurer. She keeps sprinting and dodging, and Nagi starts to awaken the sword's aura. He feels that same energy building again. Dashidar screams for Nero to look behind her. Something's coming. As the golem swings, she glances back. Nagi unleashes the slash, but she gets hit and sent flying. Still, our guy completes the fast draw. Did it work? The blade slices the golem, rips clean through, and then boom, a huge explosion. Dashidar is just standing there, stunned, muttering that what the captain did was incredible. He asks if the monster is really dead. Honestly, classic, level-up Manhwa cliffhanger, and I need to know too. But the chapter ends there, damn it. On to the next chapter. It opens with a girl saying that trying hard is one thing, but she's still useless. It must have been rough training with her. She was likely the only one without a single special ability. That's why she always got stuck running errands for the others. Man, they even made fun of her for being a black cat girl. Seriously, black cat prejudice? Anyway, back in the fight. She's lying there, all beaten up. Deshar asks if she's good, but all she cares about is if the captain actually downed the golem. Nagi says nope. At the last second, he choked. Yeah, he triggered the ability, but the slash came out completely crooked. Deshar starts beefing with Nero, saying it's her fault for getting tossed into his line of sight. The poor girl's confidence is already shot, so naturally, she bursts into tears. But Nagi steps in, saying it wasn't on her. It's just that the technique he used is still half-baked. I'm still impressed he's even pulling it off. This guy's becoming a true adventurer. The only issue now is that his body's totally gassed. At this rate, there's no way he can take on that golem, which is already winding up for round 2. Nagi's about to call a play, but a storm of rocks suddenly rockets right at them. Everyone gets tossed around. At the same time, these little stone critters start rising from the ground. Alright, looks like Deshar had summoned a barrier. I think. Nobody's quite sure what to do, and before they can even think of a plan, the monster is swinging its giant hands right at Deshar. He screams in panic, but Nero whips out a pickaxe and charges in, yelling that she'll handle it. Nagi tells her to back off, it's too dangerous, but she's already shouting that overthinking just isn't her thing. Those cheap weapons she had before were just holding her back. She knows golems have weak spots, so she just goes in swinging. But instead of breaking anything, she's just bruising up the golem. She hammers the same spot over and over, landing a full-on combo. A small crack finally starts to form, but the golem just swats her away. Poor girl. Nothing ever goes her way. She flashes back to the training grounds, how she'd spar with the other team members and try to force them to acknowledge her strength, but even when they said they accepted her, deep down, she knew they were lying. That's why she trained like a demon. Lindo's drills, Satama's sprint workouts, Rockley's kicks, she grinded through all of them. Deshar, reckless as he is, could summon those explosive creatures. And the captain, he sliced half the golem in one clean hit. In the end, she felt like the only dead weight in the group. If she couldn't do anything, how was she ever supposed to stand with them as an equal? The golem moves in for another hit, and Deshar yells for her to move, but she just says she's going to prove herself. Then something happens, some kind of explosion, and both of them freeze in confusion. What just happened is something Nagi's seen a million times during his porter days. It's something that only happens to adventurers. The moment of awakening, straight out of a level-up manhwa. A glow surrounds the girl. And suddenly she finds herself walking across a lake. She's completely confused. It feels like a second ago she was in a fight. Then someone ahead calls out, telling her to follow the path of battle. Standing before her is the monument of the martial artist, Gladiator Galatas, who says she's being blessed with martial strength to slay monsters and protect this world. Back in the dungeon, Nero clenches her fist and activates her special ability, the shockwave talent of the martial artist. Her punch lands square on the golem's massive arm, and the whole thing shatters all the way to its shoulder. The creature's body twists horribly, and she follows up with a barrage of strikes to its chest. The ridiculously named combo, Nien Nien, and the two clueless guys are just standing there, jaws on the floor, while the golem crumbles like a puzzle. The next chapter discusses special abilities, which, let's be real, we already know all about. The difference in this world is that some of them only awaken when something major happens in your life. Of course, the ability kind of reflects who you are. For example, Stone's powers are rock-based because that's his natural talent, but if he were plant-based, it'd be something with vines or roots. That's why even adventurers with the same skills can wind up with totally different versions. The little stone critters are all mining away when Nero walks up and tells them to relax. She's got this. One punch and the whole area is cleared out. She tells them to toss it all in the backpack, but suddenly, the girl starts to wobble and collapses, completely drained. Nagi tells her to take it easy. That power burns through a ton of ether. She's feeling herself now, convinced she is amazing and giving it her all. Meanwhile, by the rubble, Dasher's checking out this weird blue thing he found. It popped from the golem's very center. Nagi explains he's only seen this a few times. It's something called a soul resonance. Some necromancers can extract a piece of a defeated boss, almost like a pet. Dasher snatches it and calls dibs, but it vanishes. Actually, it looks like it's being absorbed. He's fusing the golem's soul into his own body, into his fingers, and a soul mark appears on his hand. He casually lifts his hand, makes a summoning gesture, and goes full level up Manhwa hero, shouting, "Arise!" The creature appears, just like the boss, huge and terrifying. But the energy is so intense, it's already wobbling. And then he commands the beast to kneel. Nero is totally ticked. She did all the hard work, so why is his reward better? Watching from afar, Nagi thinks this is how adventurers get crazy strong overnight. It happens so fast, a normal person could never keep up. Sure, he's happy they're improving, but it's frustrating compared to his own slow grind. He tells them to chill out. Despite their hype over killing the Guardian, they still need to clear the secret treasure room. While on their way, he warns them to stay on their toes. Just because the big guy's gone, it's not all clear. The two are already praying for epic loot. They're desperate for money. Then Nagi asks something. Why do Desitar and Nero always stick together? People from the trading grounds usually split up. Dasher admits he honestly has no clue when they even became friends. Nero then remembers him shouting for everyone to shut it while summoning golems, claiming that one day nobody could touch him, the one gifted with necromancy. Nagi says there's no need to ask. It was inevitable they'd become friends. Desitar agrees, saying, "Of course. We're both incredibly talented, and greatness attracts greatness." But now they're both curious about the captain. What's the deal with his backpack? Strange stuff keeps coming out. But he said from the start, he was just a swordsman. Nagi says he's a rare case. Usually, talents match the person, but sometimes they're custom made for specific gear, like in a level-up manhwa. His backpack is one of those rare cases. And yeah, most of the time, the stuff people get is pretty useless. Nero wants to peek inside to see what it's like. He doesn't mind, but when she touches it, she can't get her hand through. It's as if there's no opening at all. Then he reaches in and pulls out 2 lollipops. It's like magic that only works for him. They both immediately say this is the perfect skill to make a fortune, though not ideal for clearing dungeons. Nagi tells them not to underestimate it. He's already used it to launch several businesses, a restaurant, a delivery service, and more. But in the end, he's not doing any of this to get rich. He just wants to help adventurers clear one more dungeon. And for him, that's enough. Finally, they reach the reward chamber, where 3 small golem statues hold out their hands. Nagi knows these are trade statues. If you give them what they're looking for, you get a reward. But not to worry. These ones never ask for anything expensive. You just have to observe. The first one, for example, looks like a farmer. For this one, you just have to offer something simple, like a potato. And just like that, the statue gives back a green gem. That one item was enough to hit their gold quota. Then they move to one that looks like a sorcerer. Obviously, it would need something a mage would like. So, he offers a magic stone, but the statue gets ticked off, splashing everyone with a weird liquid, a weakening potion. Now it's down to the last one, the zombie statue. The others warn him not to mess this one up. Since it's a zombie, Nuromiro is convinced it wants blood, or maybe human flesh. Meanwhile, Dashner wants to offer up one of his own fingers. Nagi's debating bone, meat, or a potion, when suddenly, it hits him. Every zombie was once human. Maybe that's what it's truly asking for. He offers an apple. Oh wait, it's one of those sacred apples, the kind that carries a trace of purifying energy. If he's right, the zombie just wants freedom from its curse. A drop of juice slides from the apple, touching the zombie's palm. And suddenly, it's reliving the bad times, wandering aimlessly like a Minecraft mob. Then, with a glow, the zombie's head starts to heal, and the statue transforms into a hidden pedestal, revealing a massive pair of shears. The treasure chests slowly open, and Nagi instantly realizes what's inside is a relic. But before we even find out what it is, the scene jumps back to the guild, where they're handing in the money. Of course, Nero and Desitar are acting like hotshots, saying they're officially in the guild. At first, they thought the guild master was scamming them, but now they get it. She wanted them to grow. She says, yes, of course, that was totally the plan, while you're there wondering what's with these two clowns. But she couldn't care less. She's just going to blow all that cash on a shopping spree. Anyway, sometime later, they're arriving at the Adventurers Guild headquarters, strutting in like they own the joint. Petra sees the emblems on their chests and congratulates them for joining the guild. And those two immediately start boasting, saying the guild clearly has an eye for real talent. Nero is already yapping about everything she did, blah blah blah, and Petra just replies with an impressive. That's when Nagi walks in and says he needs an artifact examined, an unidentified martial arts relic. Petra congratulates him, while Deshitar immediately suggests selling it. But Nero cuts him off, saying, no way. That's our first relic from our first dungeon. When they first opened the chest, Dasher was clueless, asking what a relic even was. That's when Nagi realized he was stuck with two total noobs. But he also points out that with Miro awakening her new ability there, and them finding a relic at the same time, everyone's probably thinking the same thing. Nagi wants to give it to Deshitar as a gift. Dashar, naturally, still wants to sell it, but Nero is celebrating, saying she's keeping it for herself. Back at the guild, Dasher keeps insisting, no way, that relic's a regular item, so let's just sell it. Naturally, Petra cuts in, telling him that no relic is just an ordinary item. Relics are like the soul of an adventurer, and often the only reason they can clear high-level dungeons. They're so rare some adventurers hunt for them, like in a level-up Manhwa. Nagi agrees. Some people are out there in full Saint Seiya cosplay just to look the part. But ironically, relics make equipment like his backpack pretty much obsolete. It doesn't matter how strong your ability-based gear is. In the end, there's always a relic out there that's way better. Petra nods and says, alright, then uses her analysis skill. The feather quill begins writing on its own, revealing the relic's information. And at that moment, the stone starts to crack. From inside, the imitator's ring appears. A ring that can supposedly copy a user's ability. Wait, but does it copy someone else's ability? Or duplicate your own? Neuron doesn't even get to ask before it zips onto her arm and equips itself. Petra congratulates her, saying that only happens when there's an extremely high compatibility. That's because a lot of relics actually choose their wielder. Of course, Petra wastes no time telling Deshitar that it's settled. This one's hers now. Then Nagi holds up the broken sword from the cemetery, pointing out the real issue with relics. It's already cracking, and repairing these things is incredibly difficult. Petra asks how he wrecked it, and he explains it got banged up fighting the Golem. She finds that very strange. Relic 444 is supposed to be super tough. One hit did that, as Desher keeps begging him to sell it. Petra mulls over how Nagi keeps advancing like a level-up Manhwa hero, while she's just stuck. He waves goodbye, thanking them for their help, and his crew walks off, leaving her looking totally shaken. Meanwhile, Racha, sucking her finger, seems to spot something. Back at Twilight's base, Agnesa draws an X on a map, marking the 30th dungeon collapse. At this point, a clear pattern is forming, and they all connect, one way or another, to the Dawn Guild. And following this, Chu knows where the next one will hit. They could intercept, but that means facing those guys head-on. The scene then cuts to that masked dude from Dawn. He says he won't tolerate more failures. The darn Twilight Guild has messed with his plans for too long. So this next operation absolutely must succeed. Nid, beside him, asks why he's so on edge. Yi is already inside that dungeon. It should be a cakewalk. And yup, she's sneaky and dangerous. Nid even calls her a viper. Once she's locked onto a target, she never lets go. Unfortunately, even if Agnesa goes there herself, this might just be her last stand. Speaking of whom, we cut to Agnesa. Who knows Dawn's playbook? They create the problem, then they clean it up. That's why nobody's catching on. But it's obvious they're endangering countless lives. Just then, Nagi appears, asking what she wanted to discuss. She tells him an A-rank dungeon is about to collapse. Nero, Nero, and Desitar immediately volunteer. But of course, they get shot down instantly. She says they're still way too weak. And the poor duo just stands there, totally dejected. She's sure they wouldn't survive inside. Nero tries to protest, but just being near Agnesa, she can feel the massive power gap in the air. The pressure alone is enough to shut them up completely. Nagi, however, asks why they were called if it's so dangerous. Agnes explains. Indeed, Nine's team will handle the A-rank dungeon, but there's another one perfect for his crew. It's a huge underground labyrinth called the Ant Nest, and she wants the three of them to go clear it out. She's really betting on this little trio. Seriously, one's a porter. The squad isn't exactly stacked, but she simply says, this time, Nagi will lead the group. He tries protesting, saying that's impossible. He's just a porter. But she says when he joined Twilight, it wasn't for his carrying skills. It was because he is an adventurer, and that's why, for this dungeon, he will be in charge and ensure the mission is completed. This is the first time our boy is taking the lead. The problem is, what's waiting down there is beyond anything he could imagine. Right outside that very dungeon, a knight is seen fleeing in a total panic. And, holy smokes, he takes a massive spear right through the chest. He looks back, utterly stunned, wondering how this place was ever classified as rank C. That creature, at minimum, belongs in an A-rank dungeon. And because of that, his entire party got wiped out. Then we see the Shady Witch, excited for Agnes's arrival. Wait, if Nagi's going there and she's waiting, then where's the other one? Or are there two different people now? This world is full of well-drawn ladies. Apparently, back at Twilight, Nagi is feeling the pressure. After all, a gold ranker should be leading this team. Not him, but she tells him not to sweat it. She taught him everything he needs, and it will all be fine. He argues that even for a C-rank dungeon, there's still a chance of failure. She agrees, but says it's normal. These dungeons are usually cleared by multiple groups working together, so while they're going in as a trio, other teams will be helping. Besides, he basically soloed an entire labyrinth, a true level-up Manhwa moment, so she trusts him. He was her personal pick, and now she needs him to believe in himself, too. On top of that, she knows someone will be in that dungeon, the perfect support for him. Nagi says he gets it, but he's still worried. It's an ant nest, and he knows what kind of problems they usually cause. They both agree, the big issue is exploration. Obviously, an ant nest is a maze with dozens of paths. Without a professional scout, it's nearly impossible to clear. Agnes says she is aware. She's been looking for a pro explorer, even trying to hire a mercenary. The problem is, none of them seem reliable. Cut to Petra, who's wondering what being an adventurer even means now. A group of raccoon-themed explorers appears. The one on the left is a Walmart Deshitar. The one in the middle is a Petra from AliExpress. And the right one is basically a stone from Temu. Apparently, they're Petra's old friends. They say they haven't seen her since school. She's about to say, it's nice they joined a guild, but the leader cuts her off, asking since when they got so casual. Sure, they were school friends. But now Petra is just a white-ranked adventurer, and they'd better take note. This girl here already hit silver. She flaunts her stats, telling Petra to get it. No matter how good her grades were back in school, today, she's struggling to make ends meet. Petra stands there awkwardly, admitting she's not much of an adventurer. The girl then flips her hair and walks off, saying they'll talk another time. Rasha shows up and asks who those people were. Petra explains they were classmates. Turns out she went to an explorer's academy, and there's a rumor there. Mediocre explorers eventually become inspectors. That's where the bullying starts. Talented people raid dungeons. Those without talent are stuck behind desks. That's why inspectors are seen as failures. People who lacked the heart to become real adventurers. Rasha says she's a textbook example of that. She used to dream about being an adventurer, but when she realized she had no talent, she settled for being an inspector. She points out that Petra isn't like that. She could absolutely be an adventurer. That's why it's weird to see her stuck as an inspector. Petra explains her grandfather is completely against it. Rasha figures he's a strict guy, but Petra says no. He's a total crybaby who begged her not to go. That's when Rasha realizes this was never Petra's choice. She gently asks her to be honest with herself. What does she really want, after all? She's read some of the things Petra has been writing. Petra instantly gets flustered and tells her to stop. But Rasha says she feels the same. She saw how Petra looked at that backpacker Nagi. It was obvious. Like her eyes screamed, she wanted to be in a level-up manhwa, too. In the next scene, Petra wanders alone through the quiet streets, remembering when she told her grandfather her biggest dream was to become an adventurer. But hold on. I don't get it. That guy with the stone head. Is he a statue or what? I'm a little confused. The truth is, no matter how badly Petra wanted to be an adventurer, she also wanted to help her grandfather. After all, he was the one who raised her when her parents died. The problem is, this was the only dream she ever had, and maybe she shouldn't have given up on it so easily. Rasha straight up tells her she's being an idiot. Her grandfather might want her to live a safe, stable life, but what he really wants is for her to be happy doing what she loves. Now, in front of the door, Petra's wondering if Rasha was right, and when she steps inside, she announces she's taking the adventurer exam. She wants to change careers and stop being an inspector. The old man says he only has until his tea gets cold, and besides, this isn't worth it. She should stick with inspection. Petra says, maybe so, but I found out about the test today, and I want to give it a shot. The old man responds, well, that's a shame, 'cause I'm today's examiner. His name is Mr. Pot, but she can call him the adventurer killer. Of course, he gave himself that name, and earned it. Not because he ruins people's lives, but because he's a professional dream crusher. He claims zero interest in testing someone just looking to switch careers. She should know the success rate is less than 5%. Maybe she thinks she's in some level-up manhwa and got stronger. But all she'll find is disappointment. That machine is absolute. If she lacked talent before, she lacks it now. Nothing has changed. He tells her to just place her hammer on it and get this over with. In his head, he's thinking how sad. Another hopeful about to walk away crushed because once again, the machine's verdict won't change. But Petra can't help but wonder if this is really the right call. She knows she's defying her grandfather's wishes, but her heart didn't change just because she wanted to be an adventurer. This isn't even her only dream. She remembers asking Nagi why he kept risking his life in dungeons as a porter. He replied, like it was nothing, because someone has to do it. It sounded so casual, so detached, but she understood what he meant. Entering a dungeon without Ether's protection was like stepping into fire, and yet, he still chose to make a difference. She felt ashamed. Ashamed of doing nothing while having natural talent. At that moment, there's a knock at the door. Outside, Rash is waiting. She says, it's kind of ironic. Petra went for the retest and was in there less than 30 minutes. So, obviously, the result is what you'd expect. But then, she notices a little golden badge in Petra's hand. Petra walks past her without saying a word, while Rasha just mutters that it's a shame. Petra really was a great coworker. Back to our guy. Nagi's telling Agnesa, it's hard to find adventurers like that, especially for this ant nest mission. It's insanely dangerous. Agnesa knows, but the problem is, it's scheduled for tomorrow morning. There's no more time. Nagi says, well, we're screwed now. It's not like a scout's going to just fall from the sky. And then, knock, knock, someone's at the door. Wait, an outfit change? What? Petra just walked in like she's ready to take on the world. This girl came prepared. Both of them are just staring, thinking, whatever wish we just made, it worked. She's radiating confidence. We cut to that other group of explorers, and they're freaking out, saying, this has to be some mistake. How did that white rank girl suddenly jump to gold? The redhead agrees. She's never heard of anything like it. The guy with the mustache says he doesn't know either, but apparently her talent was so intense it broke the machine. The butler steps forward, swearing on his entire reputation that the result was valid. She earned it. Not long after, as he reheats his tea, the old man says, it's been ages since he felt this way. Finding a rare gem like her out of nowhere. That's some true level-up manhwa insanity. Suddenly, the red-haired girl shows up again, saying they've got a problem. Turns out that Petra, yeah, the one who took the gold rank test yesterday, is actually the granddaughter of a certain someone. When the guy hears the name, he straight up drops his tea and says they're screwed. Meanwhile, the team gets ready for the dungeon, and honestly, I'm still not used to this Petra 2.0 version. Nagi asks if she's still bothered by what she said earlier, but she just replies she doesn't even remember saying it. We see Agnesa telling Petra she knows there's nothing wrong with her, but if she really wants to join the guild, there's one thing she needs to ask. What are her goals as an adventurer? If she came face to face with a monster that couldn't be beaten, what would she do? Fight or flee? Before answering, Petra remembers what Nagi once said about stuff like that. And then she responds, in a case like that, you just play dirty, load up on armor, and use every cheap trick in the book. Agnesa stares at her, kind of disappointed, then turns to Nagi and asks what he'd do. He stands there, really thinking. He's already faced unbeatable enemies like the Lich and Agnesa herself, so he says it doesn't matter who the opponent is. You have to have the will to charge in and defeat them no matter what. Agnesa gives him a thumbs up while Petra says, that's not what you told me last time. Back in the carriage, Petra's thinking that, in the end, all she can really do is give it her all. But then, Nagi calls out to her, and naturally, both she and Deshatar are whining that it's unfair she reached gold rank before them. She explains she already had the talent, it's just that she chose to become an inspector instead. That calms everyone down, and you realize, oh, okay, she was a hidden boss all along. Nagi says he actually feels kind of relieved. He thought she was just a scout, so seeing she's gold rank gives him a bit more confidence. She smiles and says she lacks experience. Of course, but she's memorized the entire ant nest layout and even wrote a whole book on it. He congratulates her, saying she came well prepared. But he also warns her he's been to plenty of ant nests before as a porter, and the real problem with this type of dungeon is that you can't ever fully prepare. Ants are monsters that just keep coming. Plus, the layout sometimes changes, so she better brace herself for what's coming. At the tunnel entrance, everyone's excited. From above, Petra observes the crowd and says judging by the numbers, it really is a C rank. Nagi agrees, but reminds her, this is a raid dungeon. It's made for multiple teams to work together. And not only that, but this particular nest is bigger than what he's used to seeing. That's when someone asks who they are. A guy behind Nagi steps forward, introducing himself as the raid leader from the No One's Answers Guild. His name's Gerald, gold rank, and he's a total weirdo. He locks eyes on the most obvious thing about Petra, her shiny golden pendant. Then he says, you must be the captain. She shakes her head and points to Nagi, saying, nope, it's this guy here, the porter. Gerald spots Nagi's white-ranked badge and just bursts out laughing, acting all creepy and drooling. While he's dying of laughter, Nagi's teammates think he's some kind of caged beast, which, let's be real, he kind of is, just not for the reason they think. They're watching him laugh like he's insane. Petra's not letting it slide. She steps forward and tells Gerald it's pathetic to judge someone by a badge alone. And man, even his nose looks weird. With that strange tongue of his, Gerald says he has a suggestion. Of course, he offers for Petra to ditch her team and join his, especially since their current scout is just a bronze-ranked guy crying in the corner. Naturally, she turns him down flat. She says Nagi is more than qualified. Gerald just laughs it off, saying he'll have to show them how a porter is really supposed to be treated. Then he yells for his teammate, telling the kid to hurry up and get over there. The poor kid stumbles over, carrying a load that's like 5 times bigger than he is. He stops, bows his head, and apologizes to Mr. Gerald. Petra immediately points out that the boy's clearly at his limit, but Gerald just shrugs and says, that's exactly how it should be. Keeps them quiet. Then he turns to the others and says, that's how you handle a porter. He tells the little girl to take notes. Petra sighs, already expecting they wouldn't respect Nagi, but she didn't think it would be this bad. Nagi says it's fine, while noticing that all the other porters are totally overloaded. He'd forgotten what this world was like after spending time around decent people. Petra has no idea, but most folks don't even consider his class part of the adventuring world. Suddenly, someone else chimes in, saying that sure, he's a bit eccentric, but that doesn't matter. And here she comes, right on cue. Another flashy, over-the-top type. These guys are practically drooling over Ms. Johanna. She smiles and says not to worry. Things will be easy now that she's here. Yeah. She's feeling herself a bit too much. She's a bronze-ranked priestess acting like a level-up Manhwa heroine. Naturally, all the fools around her are falling all over themselves for her. Gee. Wonder why. She turns to Nagi and says he should be grateful she's there, or else their team would have already failed. Then she strikes a little pose and tells him to hurry up. She's sure this is going to be a delicious little adventure. Right? You already know this is going to be a disaster. And on her shoulder sits a little snake. Yeah. Clearly the one who's going to screw everything up. Nagi immediately notices the thing on her back. He feels something's off. And Petra asks, "What's wrong?" He says, "It's nothing. Just a bad feeling. For now, they'll stick with the group as they were told." And so begins the descent into the ant nest. Completely different from other dungeons. Adventurers call this place the Mouth of Hell. Like something from a grim level-up manhwa. The monsters just swarm non-stop. When they met the main raid group, Nagi thought for a second they'd caught a break. His inexperienced team would have struggled alone. But not even 30 minutes in, he realized these were the adventurers you only hear about in cautionary tales. His teammates asked what he meant. But come on. It was painfully obvious. These are the reckless types who ruin every single dungeon. Dungeon, monster, or trap. It doesn't matter. They just bulldoze forward, swinging at everything. No tactics, no coordination, just brute force. Naturally, it wrecks the whole formation. Then there's the second type, the stubborn mule. No matter the hints or warnings, they keep making the same boneheaded mistakes. One of the big guys, with cheeks puffed out, snaps that they're the main group, telling everyone else to stop acting like they're in charge. But obviously, they keep getting lost and wondering why it's a maze. And finally, the last type, the flirts. More into romance than survival. Johanna is right there, making eyes at some clown with a smug look. The absolute worst kind of party members. The ones who think they're in a fantasy dating sim, not a death trap. Nagi got it. This group had every ingredient for an epic fail. Ant dungeons respawn regularly. When adventurers come through and wipe the slate clean, the ants just repopulate. Clearing it is more cleanup than total extermination. And that's probably why this group is all about speed. Rushing through instead of being careful. The problem is, the faster they move, the more the exhausted porters get left behind. If the porters go down, these guys have to haul their own gear. And they'll be way less effective. But they don't give a damn. Nagi asks one if they want help, but the guy waves him off, saying he's used to it, so don't worry. Still, Nagi offers to store their bags, but they refuse. This is their job, and they won't give it up. The issue for our boy now is that he's more worried about these so-called adventurers who are about to get everyone killed. Suddenly, one of them stops and yells, "What the hell is everyone doing?" He screams at the others to move their useless selves. Petra steps up, telling him that's not how you clear a dungeon. The porters are exhausted, but he just scoffs that porters are a disgrace to adventurers. She was feeling sympathetic since her own leader used to be one. That's when the guy pulls out a money pouch to prove how worthless they are. He throws 10 coins on the ground, saying whoever brings them back first gets to keep them. Petra tries warning them, but the poor porters bolt for the coins, yelling it's more than a day's pay. The instant one of the kids touches a coin, though, a swarm of ants rushes in from all sides. The kid turns around, terrified, but at least Gerald actually does something, drawing his sword and slashing through them all. He saved the kid, and sort of. The boy didn't die. Nagi admits the guy's got a trash personality but has skills. Yeah, he's got them. Still, that doesn't excuse using a poor porter as bait. Even though Gerald wiped out the enemy, the kid's foot was hurt. Porters don't usually wear armor, since their job is carrying supplies, not fighting. To make it worse, even with a healer in the party, it's not like she's going to notice someone like him. Nagi speaks up, saying the kid could have died and asks if this is how they always operate. Gerald snaps at him to stop defending his kind. He says, "This is business. They're getting paid, and I handed out a bonus." He turns to the injured kid and asks if he's upset. The boy says no. He's actually happy. Then Gerald gets in Nagi's face and tells him to get it straight. That's how you treat a porter. Just because he's a party leader now doesn't mean a thing has changed. The mustache guy jumps in, saying the mood's getting gloomy. So why not use this argument to split up and cover different areas? There are 3 zones ahead. How about letting Maggie's group handle one while they take care of the rest? Maggie thinks, hey, not a bad idea. The problem is, guys like this rarely let you leave without strings attached. Still, anything's better, so they sort of agree. Cut to Zone 1. They're rappelling down a rope. When they reach the bottom, it's a massive open chamber. This was it, the real nest. Until now, it was just tunnels. Meanwhile, back with the others, They're laughing, saying that gold-ranked idiot doesn't know the area should be avoided. All they have to do is wait for those chumps to attract the monsters, and their dungeon path will be a breeze. They have no idea. They just sent the group straight into a death trap. And yeah, looks like Petra didn't know either. Or maybe it just hit her. She screams, a monster swarm is coming. She thinks it's coming from below. But nope. The creatures are descending from above. Nagi's standing there, still not understanding why Agnesa made him captain. A porter like him was a joke. But if this role was given to him, he was going to live up to it. He tells everyone, get ready for battle. He charges in first, ordering Nero and Desitar to cover the flanks. The first attack comes in. He knows the ant's strength is its quick stabbing legs. But he's used to Agnes's speed. This is nothing. He dodges the first blows and circles behind one, stabbing it right in the gut. Being a porter, he's seen countless monsters' weak points. After all, once the adventurers do the killing, it's the porter who has to examine the body. Over time, you learn where weak spots are. He lands a clean slash and charges the next two. He also knew ants used pheromones to communicate. That's why he threw some stinky mushrooms to mess with their scent trails and coordination. Nero compliments him, saying the captain's on point. But now it's her turn. She charges in with her Nan punch and sends 4 of them flying. That's when we finally see how that copycat ability works. When she uses her skill, the creature mirrors it right after. Deshadar says he's not getting left behind, and charges with a swarm of golems. Up on top of the creatures, Nagi can't help thinking how much easier life is for those who use ether. There's no need for analysis or hesitation. Even so, he tells everyone to be careful and not to waste too much energy. Then suddenly, the ground shakes, and he wonders what kind of tremor it is. He tells Petra to use her ability and figure out where it's coming from. The poor thing's frozen, trying to focus, mumbling about school lessons. But the second an ant charges them, she panics, starts crying, and bolts. Nagi realizes that in the end, she really is inexperienced. The fight's turning into chaos. Normally, the explorer is supposed to call out monster positions. Now their firepower is stuck on the other side. Nero is trying to recharge her ether, and Deshadar is out of summons. While blocking, all Nagi can think is that he's supposed to be the captain, but he's barely managing to hold this battlefield together. Being on the front line is a whole different story than watching with a backpack. And for all the criticism he threw at those 3 saboteurs, the truth is, a weak party is the worst thing in a dungeon. This isn't some level-up manhwa. In the end, those guys weren't the burden, they were. But then someone behind them yells for everyone to get down, unless they've got a death wish. The guy whips out a fishing rod, unleashing a lightning slash that cuts through everything. Wait, what? That guy's a white rank swordsman. Aren't white ranks supposed to be weak? Apparently, he's one of the people Agnesa mentioned. Oh. Yeah. She did say. Right? That someone would show up to help. Next, at the Twilight base, Nines asks Agnesa if it's true she sent the newbie to that guy. She casually confirms it. Yep. She sent them all to be trained by Mr. Poo-Poo. Clearly, this isn't great news, because the 2 immediately call her a demon. Those poor kids just became adventurers. They'll never survive the guild's perv. Guys, he's one of your own. Back with Nagi, who's still baffled, asking who this dude even is. He's never heard of a swordsman rank like that, either. Petra frantically asks Magi if he saw that. The guy just cleared them out without a single special ability. Magi deadpans. Of course, I saw it. He wiped them all out with just a stick. Peiwu then asks why they're all frozen. He's here. He helped. Just like Agnesa wanted. That jogs Nagi's memory of her saying she found the perfect support for him. He'd asked who, but she just said he'd know the personality when he saw it. Nagi blurts out, "Are you the guy with the personal issues?" To which Peiwu sighs that Agnesa's description is a bit harsh. Dashar and Nero then murmur that he looks awfully familiar. Oh. Wait. He's the crook who mugged them on the street. That bald-headed jerk even claims he has a common face. Could have been anyone, he says, telling them to drop it. He's here to assist the rookies, per Agnesa's request. Still, he's clearly disgusted, saying the Twilight Guild's new recruits are absolute trash. Nagi tries to de-escalate, but Peiwu steamrolls on. He says even if their firepower wasn't pathetic, they blew all their ether before finishing off a few weaklings. Now they're nothing but dead weight. It was painful to watch how amateurish and sloppy they were. They didn't even see they were walking into a death spiral. A bizarre phenomenon where ants follow each other in a loop, non-stop. It's caused by the pheromones they secrete. One ant makes a wrong turn. The pheromone trails cross, And boom, they're trapped in an endless circle. They literally march until they collapse from pure exhaustion. Now, he's sure those guys from before knew this. That's why they led your group that way. The second the spiral shifted toward them, those scumbags had a wide open path to just advance freely. The team gasps that those guys are pure evil, but Piewu cuts in, saying they have it backward. In a dungeon, the worst sin isn't being mean, it's being weak. This isn't a simple level-up manhwa. You were left to suffer because you lacked strength, and if they had actually fought those guys, every last one of them would be dead by now. Nuramiro retorts, there's no way she'd lose to blockheads with zero strategy. But Peiwu just replies that this only proves how strong those people are. If they're just barging ahead with no plan and still alive, that proves they aren't weak. Besides, the two of you standing here are even worse and just as clueless. He then adds that Agnesa told him they had potential, but were far too soft. That's why he was given full permission to train and discipline them as he saw fit. Nero immediately fires back. No, thanks. We're not trusting some weirdo we just met. But Peiwu says maybe this little tidbit will change their minds. He was the one who trained Agnesa when she was just a clueless rookie. As everyone freezes, his entire demeanor shifts, and he announces that class is now in session. He charges instantly, telling everyone to come at him. Back at the guild, Miss Hungry sits there, thinking that mindset is truly the most important thing for any adventurer. But if you lack the strength to back up your goals, then they're just as fragile as cotton. She hopes this mission helps them forge the power they need to be true companions. Back in the dungeon, it's pure chaos. Explosions are going off everywhere. Everybody's getting absolutely thrashed from all sides. The poor crew can't believe they're already buckling under the intense pressure. Nero decides she's going all in. She'll unleash her ether and nuke the area. But Peiwu scoffs that her attacks are too straightforward, dodging easily and then suddenly appearing right beside her. He says that unfortunately, her moves are still way too predictable. Then he whacks her hard in the shin. Her whole leg glows bright red, and he immediately calls out that it's obvious she just learned that skill. Given how she uses it like a total newbie, she gives up and snaps. Fine, I was forced into this anyway. Naturally, she summons her brand new, brutal golem. Peiwu compliments her, and Deshitar starts puffing up with pride, only to get smacked in the head with a rod too. Pupa explains a bigger summon slows you down. Then he says it's time for the next lesson. And this attack is headed straight for poor Petra. You know, the one who started this mess. The poor girl. A rope net flies out, trapping her completely. She's all tangled up now, basically a cocoon. Thankfully, it stops there. I was worried things were gonna get weird. Watching this go down, Nagi starts to realize maybe that pupil training stuff wasn't a lie from Agnes after all. He knows his turn is coming, and he's gotta stay sharp. Especially since this guy's range is almost impossible to track. Here comes the first swing. Nagi locks in, focusing everything, refusing to hesitate for even a second. He has to block the tip of that rod. The strike hits his blade's edge, and he tries redirecting it, but it's too late. He still takes the full brunt of the explosion, and then Pupa grins, saying he reacted just as Agnes predicted. If he were a truly talented adventurer, he would have blocked that hit. But unfortunately, someone who relies purely on physical strength is just a well-trained civilian. He was basically a garbage bag, just like that pendant he wears around his neck. Harsh. Yeah. But that was him going easy. What Pupa wants to see is that so-called special sword technique, the one that managed to slice through trash. Nagi says it's too dangerous. And Pupa laughs, asking if the kid actually thinks he can hurt him with that. He says he can block any attack, so Nagi should just bring it. Nagi nods, steps into position, and warns that he's not apologizing afterward. Pupa glances at him sideways, a bit surprised. It's a draw-style stance. Not bad. The positioning is actually decent. Still, he's sure Agnes is the type to exaggerate everything. That's just who she is. Pupa is already bored, wondering how long until the sword flares up. Nagi slowly opens his eyes. The attack is ready. He warns Pupa not to go whining to him later. Pupa starts to say he needs to stop acting like he's in a level-up manhwa. Then he sees the slash coming and realizes that technique was no joke. Next thing you know, he's on the ground, totally wrecked. Dude had charged up aura for 3 whole chapters just to get folded like laundry. His plan was to earn everyone's respect, but instead, all he earned was a blade to the face. Sometime later, he wakes up in a panic, begging them to go easy. When he looks around, yep, everyone's staring at him. And of course, Desitar and Nero. Nero now want to know if they can learn from this guy. He just got owned by their captain. Pupa snaps at them to shut it, claiming he let his guard down. Then he wants to know if Nagi was seriously trying to kill him. The kid needs to realize he only survived because he's amazing. Most people would have died from that. Nagi says he did warn him it was dangerous, but Pupa fires back. Warning someone doesn't mean you get to blast them with raw aura. The thing is, our boy has no idea he even used aura. And that's when it hits Pupa. This kid doesn't even know the kind of power he's got. If he had mastered that ability, Pupa would be dead right now. That's not a basic attack. This is a power he's only heard of from the Forbidden Eras. But why could a simple porter manifest something like that? Now it makes sense why Agnes was watching him. Pupa says, "Fine." The kid's impressive for his level, but now it's time for round 2 of training. He's going to show Nagi exactly why he is Agnes's master. Nagi asks if he's stronger than Agnes, and Pupa says, "Well, that's part of it. But the real reason isn't just that he trained her. It's his vast knowledge of ether. That same knowledge let him instantly read all of their weaknesses. Let's be real, their flaws are practically glowing in neon." He points to Nero. She has zero understanding of her energy, unlike a protagonist in a level-up manhwa. Her power to boost physical strength is basic stuff, but what she doesn't realize is her ether is all concentrated in her chest. That flashy blue punch of hers, it's just for show. There's no real force behind it. And from the way her shockwave moved, it's clear she has zero control. Her only saving grace is this ant nest happens to be the perfect place to train. Her training plan is dubbed Escape from the Infinite Ant Room. He's throwing her into a single tunnel chamber to charge through dozens of oncoming ants. Then he turns to his wand-wielding summoner and tells him he's lucky. His ether and skills happen to sync up pretty well. Of course, Deshadar immediately claims that's obvious. He's a genius, but Piwu isn't buying it. He says he's pretty sure that ether of his is inherited, likely a family legacy. But with his current talent, he's never going to surpass that certain someone. Deshadar is surprised Piwu already knows all that. Piwu tells him what he really needs now is to develop total awareness of his surroundings. That's why he's getting blindfolded, gagged, strapped to his monster's back, and forced to fight, relying only on the golem's senses. And of course, he's dropping him in a zone packed with ants, just to make sure the training actually means something. Then he calls for the coward with her midriff showing. Out of everyone there, her talent came closest to a true high-level adventurer, but at the same time, she was also the most inexperienced and completely clueless. So, he makes it clear they got trapped in that ant swarm because of her screw-up. Even a rookie bronze-rank explorer would have spotted something so obvious. What she clearly needs to develop is intuition. She'll be taken to a pitch-black cave. No sight, no sound. Inside, she must rely purely on her instincts to move. Her objective is to reach the center and find something he's hidden there. But she'd better be careful, because countless sleeping ants are in that cave. The moment she makes a sound, she's toast. Then he turns to the porter kid and lunges. Nagi reacts immediately, drawing his sword to block. Piwu tells him flat out, their training is going to be a fight. A real one. As they spar, Piwu points out the kid's first problem. He overthinks everything, always looking for patterns and habits, trying to break things down. But that won't always work, especially in dungeons against the unknown. He has to be ready for things beyond his calculations. Piwu knows Nagi developed this fighting style to compensate for his lack of physical strength, but now that style has become a ceiling that's holding him back. He's already figured out that the kid has an inferiority complex, and that's the one thing keeping him from becoming a real adventurer. Nagi snaps back that it makes no sense. Piwu just said if he had even a little talent, he would have easily blocked that hit, and since Piwu knows so much about talent and ether, he should get how hard it is to live without it. Piwu admits that maybe he doesn't. He used to think the same way. But after studying ether for years, he learned something important. As Nagi likely knows, this world has awakened ether, and there are 3 ways it can awaken. Through talent, through equipment, and an unknown method. Awakening through talent is what 90% of adventurers experience, obviously. It's like unlocking a new class in a level-up manhwa. That's the easy path. The moment your talent awakens, you're changed forever. Even a guy who has never touched a sword, if he awakens a swordsmanship talent, could wipe out an entire squad of knights. Nagi just says, "Yeah, I already know all that. It's obvious." Piwu tells him to start paying more attention to his own case. The second type of awakening is through special tools, equipment that's rare, as most gear isn't strong enough to make someone an adventurer. Nagi nods, saying that's why relics are so highly valued. Piwu agrees. He's right, but there's something almost nobody knows. There's a huge difference between a relic and an ether-type item. Both have special abilities, but unlike relics with fixed powers, ether equipment actually grows with the user. The gear itself is ether in physical form. You can feel it, it's tangible. Then he tells Nagi to wake up and see he's already using an ether-type weapon. That fishing rod turned blade he carries, called Disappointment. Yeah, that's one. A rod that can catch anything. Nagi. Realizing what this means, Nagi insists no one's that strong without some talent. Pugh tells him he's still thinking too small. When you're born to wield an item, you must become one with it. Perfect harmony. Only then can you pull off stunts like this. Right then, the fishing hook's tip hits the ground and starts burrowing. What? This dude just used some forbidden fishing technique to catch a fish from underground. It's a creature with traits from the soil it was caught in the ant nest. And yep, eating it would boost his strength even more. He opens his mouth wide and for a second you think he'll take a bite. Then boom, full-on gulp. He downs the thing whole. Nagi just stands there, stunned, having a full-blown existential crisis as his world unravels in real time, all because of this drooling, long-nosed maniac in front of him. Now it makes sense why the gorgeous Agnesa called this weirdo a pervert, and he even called Nagi sweetie. Yeah, that tracks. Now, the next chapter kicks off with Miro's training. She's trying to get through the ant corridor, but no matter how many she KOs, she can't clear a path. She realizes at this pace, it'll take her about 1,000,000 years to escape this place. Meanwhile, all Desert has managed to do is run from ants. He hits a fork and says, "Go right," but that's from his point of view. His golem goes left, dead end, boom, explosion. Elsewhere, the lovely Petra is crouched by a corner, hiding from ants and sensing their presence. She realizes these ones seem way more alert than the others, probably because they're used to surviving in the dark. Problem is, that's not her turf. So, how's she supposed to deal with this? The one thing keeping her going is knowing that if it were Nagi, he wouldn't just give up. He'd pull something from his backpack and figure it out. So, she digs into her own pocket and pulls out a cheap little string, a beginner explorer item. But for her, it's all she's got. She focuses, throws the item, and the moment it hits the middle of the room, she expands her aura. She feels it bounce off the ants, allowing her to navigate forward. Glowing and graceful, she slips right through the swarm, completely unbothered. Meanwhile, back with Nagi, he's getting body slammed into the floor, calling this training as being generous. This is a one-sided beatdown. Pugh casually says, "Yep, a lesson. But if the kid's not careful, it might turn into a funeral." Nagi stands up again, only to get smacked across the sword, launched away, and boom, Pugh's already behind him. The creepy guy leans in, whispers in his ear, and flicks his forehead, and says he left himself open. And wow, he actually says, "Beginners taste amazing. Lord, help us all." Nagi tries to strike back, but the lunatic just dances around him, saying he's way too slow. In a last-ditch effort, Nagi calls for Gluttony, pulls out a mushroom, and chucks it at the freak. It bites, explodes, and nothing. Pugh walks out of it completely fine. He laughs, saying, "It's funny how you both use equipment, but the gap is still massive." So, Nagi demands, "Fine, then tell me the secret," and Pugh just shrugs, saying, "I have no idea. Because everyone has different gear. Every piece of equipment evolves in its own way. His only job is to shatter Nagi's mindset, the one where he keeps telling himself he'll never get stronger. Because the truth is, Nagi's convinced himself he doesn't have any talent. But it's okay. Pugh has been there too. He thought the same way for a long time, and that's exactly why he's here. To help Nagi break that thinking. He's going to help him find out what his body is really capable of. After getting wrecked, Nagi just lies there, laughing like an idiot. He finally gets it. Pugh was right. He had been lying to himself this whole time, convincing himself that someone like him could never become a real adventurer, because he watched so many people, some who started with him, others, way after, reach the places he wanted to be faster, and all he could do was watch as everyone pulled ahead in this real-life level-up manhwa. In the end, everybody smashed the like button on this video, which helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers.